Hi viewers, today I'm continuing the little series of Stalker drawings that I started with the last couple of videos. I'm taking a suggestion made by a couple of users on Reddit. This one's cheeky, and I like it, but I'm only going to take half of this suggestion. Instead of a Clear Sky faction member being chased up a tree by mutants, let's do one battling mutants. A dynamic action pose like this is also going to be a good opportunity for me to exercise my composition, perspective, and figure drawing muscles. It also makes for a more exciting picture, so it's a win-win. To make an action pose more explosive, I try to push foreshortening as much as I can. In order to do that, I need very clear but exaggerated perspective lines. And those are going to help me draw the gun foreshortened, which is going to be an area of focus and also a highly complicated object, so I need the help. Any drawing with perspective needs planning, and there was actually a lot of sketching I did off-screen before I started this one, which is kind of a shame that I didn't record it because it is a cool process, and I started with a completely different idea than what made it to paper. Originally, this was going to be a stalker in a crouched firing position with a shot set up over his shoulder and taking shots at mutants that were rushing him from the distance. But as I started sketching, the idea morphed. I went through a couple pose iterations, and before I knew it, I had a better idea, and I went with that one instead. So at this point in the drawing, I'm starting work on the gun. The foreshortening for this is very, very exaggerated, and if we're any more exaggerated, it would probably start to approach the realm of cartoony. And I like to walk that line between realistic and cartoony. Thanks to that, this piece ended up being kind of a comic book style, which is good because action and visual storytelling are very, very important to drawing comics. Despite the admitted not-so-realisticness of this piece, drawing the gun was really, really tricky and technical, and as you can see, it took me a couple of tries to get it to where I wanted. Oh yeah, about here you can see some of the sketches that I made peeking out in the corner of the footage there. That was actually an iteration of the earlier design idea I had, so it actually is not very relevant, but, well, there's a whole page. There's a whole page of those guys just off screen, so just imagine that. Anyway, because of the complexity of this piece, the drawing stage is taking disproportionately more time than some of the pieces I made in earlier videos. Sometimes I get people asking me, like, when they see a drawing, they're like, "Whoa, you can just do that?" And, while it's true, I am a fast sketcher. Not all the drawings I make are just spontaneous. I guess I'm trying to say, like any other artist, I gotta plan and sketch and figure things out. Can't just do it all on a whim sometimes. But anyway, here comes the ink. I'm starting this one off with my trusty brush pen. But I wasn't really sure about the direction I wanted to take it, and soon enough, I switch over to my microns and try that instead. Okay, I've got my micron, things are going a little more smoothly. When inking comic book style stuff, usually the first thing is to go around and outline objects, and then fill those objects with hatching as needed. As ever with inking, there's always a danger of over-developing, and that precious blank white paper can never be taken back again. And since hatching is so much fun, sometimes I'm just like, I'm gonna hatch the whole damn thing. And then I go and hatch the whole damn thing, and then you step back and go, shit, should not have done that. Here, inking the helmet turned out really, really well. I was very decisive with inking the shadows on this one. It's basically made up of solid black and solid white. It turned out very reminiscent of Mike Mignola, a comic book artist whose grasp of inking is masterful. Okay, with the figure more or less complete, next up is the shotgun. Because of all the planning that I did earlier, inking this is relatively brainless. All I gotta be concerned about is making the values right. Speaking of values, looks like I'm getting a little distracted by the sleeve. The other thing I'm thinking about is making sure that my lines follow the form of whatever object that I'm drawing. So in this case, I want the lines of that pump to look like they curl under and then back up. That'll really sell the impression of it being a 3D object. The body and barrels of the gun are simpler, they're just straight lines. So long as they follow those perspective lines, they'll look good. At this point, the pump actually needs more value. It should be darker than it is. I believe I came back later on and filled that in, but for now I'm moving on to the mutant. The mutant's nothing too special. I'm keeping it, in general, all one value, pretty dark. I switched to my brush pen to get her done. The mutant is mostly off the page with just his claws coming in, and its form is kind of merging with the muzzle flash from the gun. And I did this because sometimes the impression of a thing is stronger visually than the thing highly defined, especially if that thing is scary or unnatural, like a mutant. It also remains true that the stalker is the subject of the piece, not the beast. So, no need to show him, really. I've added just enough to make it clear what's going on, and that's all I need. I also added those bits at the top there to not only further obfuscate the form of the mutant, but it's also kind of a comic booky sort of trick to indicate action or speed. Since the mutant is flying at this dude from who knows where, it's good to have a little visual indication of that. Alright, so when drawing the background or environment, it's always just another opportunity to do some visual storytelling. In this case, I'm going to do that with the objects that I'm going to place around him. He's got an ammo can, tipped over in the action, of course, but there nonetheless. I want that to indicate that he's kind of been camped out there for a while. There are a couple empty shells around him. He's been hiding behind this cover for a little bit, and then all of a sudden, sneak attack from behind. So I start with the objects first, shade them a little bit, and then I'm going to fill in the area around them with rock. I used microns for the objects because they need detail, and brush pen for the rock and soil because it doesn't have to be precise at all. In fact, I'm going to use my little brush pen trick of dry brushing to fill it with some texture, and that's going to save me a lot of effort. Never mind, I'm back to the microns, trying to keep that value in control after all. If I were to fill that space with heavy brush pen marks, I would have just obscured the silhouette of the stalker there, and that would have been not good for the illustration. So, microns for nearby, and I'll switch to brush pen for the bits of rock that are farther away. That won't interfere with the figure as much. I'm dry brushing with the brush pen in the foreground, though, around those shells, and the reason I'm not concerned about losing the shells is that at this point I'm already planning on putting some color in this after the drawing is done, and I'm just going to color those shells in with red or some other slightly bright color, and they won't get lost, so not concerned. Alright, and with just a few finishing touches, the drawing is done. This one overall took probably about an hour and a half or so, start to finish, especially with all those sketches. And like I mentioned, I am planning on doing some color on this, so stick around, keep your eyes peeled for part 2. Thanks, y'all.